Alright, so we're making some progress in this city now, and we're getting ready to expand to the coast. Gonna go big on this one, and I'm gonna develop this big stretch of land west of the highway from this arterial right the way down to this highway bridge. Today I'm gonna create a huge, detailed beach hotel district. It'll be something of a resort type development. There'll be plenty of high density buildings, but it won't be a high density area. There's going to be loads of leisure opportunities for the Sims, and I'm going to have plenty of transport options in place for them as well. First, a quick apology to my Patreon members. I forgot to credit you guys in the last video. In fairness, I'm not used to having any members to shout out, so there are a few of you subscribed now, so thanks very much. And again, once again, your generosity is really appreciated. Thank you. With this video, I probably bit off a bit more than I could chew for a weekly episode. The build itself took more than 15 hours, never mind the editing, so there is a lot in this one. It is very detail heavy, so we will have a few time lapses as the build progresses, and we'll check in every now and again and review what's been built. I built this a couple of weeks ago, and there were quite a few challenges on this one. The transition from the Thunderstore to the PDX mods was in full swing when I was recording, so there were a few mods missing. Some of them became available as the build progressed. Some weren't working properly, and I've got a recurring problem with props despawning as well and disappearing. But despite that, we got through it and we managed to get a pretty decent looking area wrapped up come the end. So with the area cleared, I want to get the main drag down. So a nice wavy 4-lane road where I can envisage the coastal collector road is what I want in here. I'm going to run it right down to and under the bridge at the River of Pooh, but as this is just a sliver of low density residential, I'm going to knock it down to a normal 2-lane road. The rail line is going to run through here close by, so before any further in terms of creating development, it was necessary to get that rail in its place, so we're not trying to shoehorn it in later on. There was a fair bit of terraforming to get that nicely sloped up and over the river. I'll not subject you to me forever tweaking that. Let's just skip that through and I'll give you a quick shot of how it looks. So with that rail in place, I want to get a visual idea of how the bridges that will connect to the local area on the other side of the highway are going to look. I'm planning on getting a train station at a lower level next to the highway. We'll improve the connections ever more with a couple of matching pedestrian bridges as well. Again, to help with getting that visual in my mind, I'm going to use the dev UI and get the beach sand surface in. I don't know about you guys, but when I can actually see it, a little bit of progress on the go on the screen for something big, it does help my brain get the plan together a little bit quicker. Right, back to the infrastructure. After thinking about future expansion, I decide to run a second rail line up here. I think the future downtown to the south will have multiple lines running from it, and I plan to branch off the line east, just north of the station, so it kind of makes sense to get a second line in now. It should look good once the lines are up and running, and we get tons of trains running on the multiple lines. It should be plenty of interest. I do like watching the trains do their thing in this game. It looks pretty good. For this build, I'm not going to use the dev UI for a custom station. I'm actually pretty happy with the asset in here. I think it should be appropriate for the area once we develop around it in later episodes. Quite often the station does look too big, but I think it's going to be a nice fit for what I have planned, so it stays in here for now. So a little bit of extra parking in here should be handy to expand out the look of the station asset, and then we'll get it hooked into the local road network. I reckon a little transport hub of sorts could be a nice addition here for a later episode. One last infrastructure task to complete here is a simple service interchange to the south. I've just gone for a basic diamond here. It was a little awkward getting it over the dual train tracks, so I popped Anarchy on, used a little bit of dev mode to delete the pillar, and then after removing the lane between the on and the off ramps, just a case of getting a smooth connection in. Before the video's done, I will be revisiting this. We'll finesse the curves and the ramps, we'll get it looking a little bit better, but I just want the area bookmarked, so I'm not going to be developing on it by mistake. There weren't any road tools available when I was making this, which really does help getting the ramps look pretty good, but they did become available before the recording was finished, so I'll be revisiting it. We'll be making it look a bit better, but for now, it'll do nicely. It's not going to get a huge amount of traffic at this stage, and I think it's definitely one we'll probably end up revisiting. With the highways and the rail sorted, the first task is to decide on a general layout for the hotel area. I very purposely want to create a resort feel. I do not want this to look like a downtown or anything super heavy in terms of density. So I'm going to draw out some individual plots, and the idea is to have one or two high level buildings, then complement it with some heavy detailing and maybe a few low density commercial assets within the plots to complement the high-rise buildings. There will be more dedicated commercial areas shown today, but a little bit more on that later on. I'm going to reclaim some of the land near the highway and have a steeper drop off towards the freeway. This will give us a lot more space to plan out a decent sized park area a bit later, and pulling those pedestrian walkways here help visualise what we're going to be building around later on. It's a big area to fill, and we need to create something with a bit of variety so it doesn't look too repetitive. Okay, now on to the big assets, and the first task here is to get our swimming pool outlines in. Just going to draw it out with a path. I want it big, but not too big that it's going to look out of place. Bit of variety in terms of the orientation as well as the actual shape of the pools should help break up the layout a little bit. One of the really time consuming aspects of this build is finding appropriate building assets for the hotels. With the swap over to PDX mods, we're obviously going to be using the excellent Plop the Robles mod that prevents buildings from leveling, but you've got to make sure that the setting is correct. So go into settings and you've got to tick that box to make sure that they won't level. If you don't do that, there's a pretty good chance that they will go abandoned. Did take me a little bit of time to figure that one out again, so yeah, if you're doing it yourself guys, just check that setting. It might save you a lot of wasted time, especially if you want to have very specific assets in your builds. The plan with the hotel developments is to create a variety of buildings. I'm looking to keep the colours fairly uniform throughout, and we can get some pretty nice mini builds by pushing some of the buildings up close to each other, or maybe even overlapping them. Using the small asset parks also gives you a nice easy starting point for decorating each plot. You can plop them into your build, and you can build your paths and stuff around it later. So I'm going to continue to build out on the area here. We'll get the rest of the big buildings in, the big hotels, a little bit of the sort of layout to be done within the actual plots themselves as well, and we'll stick a couple of the normal car parks in here as well. And again, it's just really just a case of getting the big stuff done, get it in place, and then we can sort of plan to build around it. If you guys are enjoying the content, a completely free way of helping the channel guys is at dropping a like or a comment on the video. Really does help with the engagement. If you don't mind taking a second to do that, it would be much appreciated. Thank you very much. So having a quick spin around here, I reckon I'm happy with the overall layout and the building placement for the big stuff, so yeah, happy days. So we're on to the medium sized stuff now, working our way down. First port of call is getting the big park assets in. I'm going to place these two between the pedestrian bridges. Extending out further between the bridges, we can finish off boxing off the area essentially. And now that I know that the position is set, the rest of the surrounding area will all basically be a custom park build, and it's shaping up to be a pretty big one by the looks of it as well. On the road between the park assets and directly across the road from the park, I'm going to kick off some commercial activity. I want this area tucked in behind the high rises to be a nightlife area of sorts, so I'll have a play about with the zoning and the density until I figure out what's going to be looking appropriate for what I'm looking to achieve. In the end, I settled on having a mix of lower density near the park and small 2x2 higher density behind it. I like to think that higher density is something of a nightlife strip, so we'll keep the bright neon signage at the front of the buildings in place. It's actually one of the few examples where I like that signage, so we're going to keep that. To the south of the build, I want to create a secondary commercial area, and this will be a low density, and I envision this to be more of a kind of chilled out mixed development in terms of the types of businesses that you'll find rather than a full scale park area. I want to focus it more on sort of shops and restaurants, but I'm going to create a couple of outside, dining or drinking or hangout areas which should look pretty cool. The first task is to create a layout appropriate for the area, so I'm going to create a little imperfect grid sort of area here using the avenues. There won't be much traffic going through here, so these little roads should give the impression that it's pretty walkable. I reckon the scope here again for one last high rise. This asset is really nice. I really like this one actually. It's a great fit. It looks like something that you would find looking over a beach, doesn't it? Either apartments or a hotel asset. And there does seem to be quite a few people creating Florida and Miami builds right now, and I reckon this is one of the assets that you're going to be seeing popping up pretty often. So we'll let them assets grow in, and we'll see what we get. And while I'm at it, I'm going to zone in the first of the beach property residential. This will be zoned right the way down the coast eventually, and I think the city is pretty much ready for some big expansion once this build is done. From a budget point of view, I still have the services cut, and taxes are still pretty high, so getting some more zoning in and getting the population up will help the city get back to a financial healthier footing, so to speak. The zoning demand should improve as we add more people into the city as well, so that's pretty much a priority, I think, probably for next episode. Now it's time to get the beachfront worked on, and let's see what we can get in and let's see what looks good. I'd like to get some thicker vegetation forming something of a barrier along the beachfront, so to make sure it doesn't get out of hand, I'll create a long path running the entire length of the coast, and I'll essentially use that as a guide to box the shrubs in. I'll make sure there are plenty of options for our Sims to join up on the path. I do want them to use this, and I think it'd be pretty nice seeing some auction action along the coast. So the notorious paywalled palm trees, I mean, whatever your opinions are with that decision to lock it in behind the DLC, I'm at least glad I've got them to use. Quite honestly, I hope they have a rethink on that decision to bundle it in with property DLC. Stuff like vegetation trees are just the basics. I mean, the absolute basics, everybody should have them, so yeah, we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to line the whole avenue here, anarchy on, and I'm going to space them out evenly, right on the grass verge on both sides. Look pretty nice, I think, once it's all done and dusted. For the bushes between the paving, I'm going to create something of a repeated pattern the entire length of the beach. I'll mostly fill it in with the same green bush, and then I'll fill the smaller gaps with the lighter bushes to create something of a layered effect. If you do decide to do this kind of thing on the same scale here, do yourself a favour and get an auto clicker for your mouse. It'll let you paint the area without giving yourself carpal tunnel syndrome. Definitely recommended. And to finish off here, a smaller palm spaced out within the bushes wraps up that effect, adding something of a manicured effect on the messier bush sections. So let's have a look bit closer at that border area, and this is the main section. Off camera, I'm going to run it right the way down along to the residential area to the south, and I think it's a nice mix of imperfect bushes and neatly spaced trees. Pretty nice contrast, I reckon, and I'll be adding some more lighting, some seating, and a few points of interest along the coast when we get to the detailing later. So a few of the bigger detailing items will get worked on now. I'm going to get the pool sorted out, I'm going to drop them down past the ground level, I'll surface them, I'll fill them in, and after that I'll decide on where to put the custom car parks in. Yeah, and I think with all of them done, that's looking pretty good. So, lots of little spots here and there for custom car parks. We've put in a few of the standard ones, but these custom ones, obviously I just love, I'll put them in every build. They do take a bit of time making, but they're absolutely worth it every single time. So, I just saw there is a network mod out that has functionality built in to make these custom car parks rather than using the dev UI, so I'm going to be needing to check that out. Let's get some of these beach properties in now. I'm not going to do anything too fancy here, I'm just going to run a basic road pattern or two along the coast. I don't want it wall to wall here, so I'll introduce a few gaps between the zoning with a view to get it filled in with some trees and bushes later down the line. Off camera, I did a lot of the fence work on the main development. It was an absolute pain to get these things in place. As you drag it out, the colours keep changing, as you pull out the fence. And there seems to be about 10 different colours with the asset that I wanted to use. So if I didn't get the right colour, I had to delete it, draw it back in again. It's a big area, there's a lot of fences to get matched. It was not fun, 10 out of 10, I would not do it again. But it does look good, so I don't know, I'll see. At this point, there's going to be a lot of detailing, so it seems like a good idea to start a quick time lapse here. Enjoy the music, I'll catch up with you in a couple of minutes, and we'll do a quick review, okay? So as we take a look along the coast, you can see that I worked on getting the vegetation sorted for the residential district here. Smaller, deciduous North American trees with some additional oaks and palm trees giving the look I was going for. And behind that, I introduced some of the sound barriers to the highway. On the coast, in front of the smaller grey hotels, which is coming up here, I detailed an outdoor eating area looking over the water, which is a pretty nice feature. And I managed to fully detail the first of the hotel plots with paving, hedges, lights, benches, stones, bushes, trees, the whole lot. The rest of the hotels have got the pathway network in and the surfaces in place now, so they're ready to be worked on, and we should be pretty much ready for final detailing now. It's all starting to come together quite nicely here, and it's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it so far. Now, our low density commercial area will need a bit of love here. Again, a nice mix of organised line vegetation with some of the mixed trees and plenty of palm trees, of course. Again, I'll work to create a bit of contrast and fill in some of the gaps and really try and help make the place look a little bit more realistic. One little area I wanted to create was something of an outside courtyard, the kind of place you might go and get a drink or some street food, and it's easy enough to do. So rather than just filling in the space behind your commercial with trees, give yourself a little bit extra space, get some paths in there, line it with the odd bush or the odd tree, get your props out and stick some benches, seating, lighting, and box the whole area in with some fencing. So essentially you're creating your own little bespoke plaza anywhere you like with a little bit of imagination. I'm going to have a few of these little pockets of interest dotted throughout the building. I think it does feel appropriate to have these in high footfall areas within the beach hotel district, doesn't it? So we've still got quite a bit to go with the finishing detail. The upcoming section here will complete all of the hotel leisure areas and gardens. The pool areas need their seating and the deck chairs and all that good stuff. And once the section is done, we'll have a closer look at the beach area. But in the meantime, gonna pop some tunes on, we'll get the last of the detail and time lapse wrapped up, and I'll catch up with you in a couple of minutes and we'll run through again what we're gonna do on the beach. We'll have a proper review at the end as well. With the beach areas, the prop line tool comes in, really useful getting the deck chairs and the parasols in place. I've created a few blocks and each block has its own unique colour, and I guess that gives the impression that each block belongs to maybe a particular hotel or a particular complex. It's easy enough to break up the uniformity of the chairs and the parasols by creating a little activity area. The little shed and kiosk here could be rental offices for the chairs, or it could be storage for beach activities or whatever. A little further down the beach we have a little cafe with seating and some toilet facilities. Nobody wants to get caught short on the beach, do they? And behind these areas, some bush and a little bit of bushes and trees help kind of blend it into the areas, maybe just a little bit. A more formal paved area with some seating and shade was created a bit further down. A bit of bushage lining the brick walls, and a few more palms for shade rounds off that little street food area as well. There's a few other bits and pieces I created down here, but we'll show you that in a few minutes in the review. To wrap up this part of the build, I'm going to add some lighting along the beach walk, and with that in place I want to add some underwater lighting again to the pools, and it really does make quite a big difference at night having that, so don't want to forget about that. So just have a very quick review here of what we've done in terms of the detailing. Obviously we've had a look at the beachfront already, we've talked about the bushes and the trees, repeating some of the assets with the trees of course, and then not so much repeating them with the bushes. Detailing looks quite nice, and this path itself is pretty much a tourist attraction, you know, on its own right. In terms of the individual plots with the hotels, we try to give a unique feel on each one of them, so we're just sort of mixing up some of the detailing, the trees, adding some different little props and benches and stones and all the rest of it to help create that unique feel I'm talking about. So we'll have a little look at this outdoor seating area. Super happy with that. We think we can use some of the props and we can try and encourage some of the hangout areas. I think that's how the new mod works. I've not really had a proper play about with it yet, but we'll try and get some life in here at some point later down the line. Nice little garden area here along with a commercial area. We're just kind of filling it up with different trees and at different heights. Park area has come out looking very nice, really happy with that. Obviously we've added some commercial on here. We have used some of the park assets, and then we've created essentially some of our own park assets, and yeah, beautiful big park which has come out really nice. The outdoor area looks pretty nice, or outdoor what would you say, nightlife area I guess is looking pretty decent. I think that's all appropriate. I think I said earlier on I actually quite like the neon signs on these buildings, which is kind of unusual because in most circumstances I would be looking to dev mode and take them off, but that are absolutely appropriate here, I reckon. We'll have a look at some of the other hotels sort of individually here. So of course we've got the pool area, got it all fenced off. That looks like a pretty pleasant place to spend your holidays, doesn't it? Not too bad at all. Stuck on some of the sports assets, and again we just bulked it out with a few tables and whatnot, and try and give it that sort of individual look. I don't know what these guys are up to. Get them off pause. They're just standing, staring at a wall. She's crying. I don't blame her. Okay. As you are. So onto more trees along this little corner. I think bunching it off and creating a little bit of shade is pretty cool. I do like that. I think it looks very nice. More swimming pools, of course, again. And again, we just added another little unique path area as well. Nothing too fancy there, but it does make a nice contrast from all the busy detail, doesn't it, on the rest of the swimming pools and all the rest of it. So we got plenty of action coming to these buildings here, which is nice to see. Car parks full, of course, as well. Custom car parks all around. And again, we've kind of created another couple of little custom pathways here just with the surface. And then just fencing it off. This one looks pretty nice actually, I do like that. It's decent. Plenty more detailing of course around the swimming pools. And again, some more chilled out and shaded areas, which would be pretty welcome as the sun never stops on this map. Again, same idea. Couple more swimming pools, different sizes, different plot size, shapes and sizes and orientations. Happy with that. And again, this little block, nothing too fancy. I guess this is probably some of the cheaper hotel accommodation. It's a little bit further away from the shore, and it doesn't have a swimming pool, but it does have a big play park. So again, I'd like to see a bit more action in here, and again, hopefully revisiting that that mod will give us what we're looking for. Like with the beach assets, we've created a little point of interest every here and there, just to break things up, and again, you would kind of expect that sort of thing as well, wouldn't you, you know? I did spend a little bit of time, although the props are disappearing and the deck chairs in particular are disappearing, I did spend a little bit of time and we put them back in. So yeah, it's worth doing it. I think it does make a bit of a difference, doesn't it, you know? So, little swing park, couple more benches, toilets, couple of palms in there as well, and again, a little cafe. I'm going to ignore that says bookstore, okay? So it is a cafe, we'll run with that, okay? But yeah, no, happy with that. That pretty much sort of runs over the rest of the build, really. I'll give you a couple of quick shots to enjoy.